Welcome everybody to The Art of It All. I am Stephen Lynerd. It's my honor to have a special guest in the studio this evening, Shawn Maxwell. An honor to have you, Shawn. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Anyway, thanks again for being here. Talk to us a little bit about growing up musically. What were some of the steps that got you to saxophone and all that?
Well, I'm originally from Joliet, and
Yes.
I did not touch a saxophone at all until I got much older. I started in the Joliet band in fourth grade on clarinet.
Public schools,
Okay. And went through the grade school, junior high, and high school. Just playing clarinet, never knew anything about jazz or anything like that. It wasn't actually till I graduated high school, and I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do with my life.
Okay.
And my parents were like, dude, you're going to go take some classes at Joliet Junior College.
Okay.
And thank God I did, because that's where I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I was like, I'll take a bunch of these music classes. And the guy that was in charge of the fine arts program, that Jerry Lewis, trumpet player, teacher, friend of mine, his son and I grew up together in high school. He said something along the lines of like, hey, we always need a saxophone for jazz band. Why don't you sign for jazz band? I'll let you borrow a saxophone.
I'll let you borrow a saxophone.
And that's where it kind of started.
Starting on alto.
Yeah, started on alto, and I got way into it, and that's when I started learning. I was late to get into college, but that's when I started learning and figuring out, I like this music thing, and as much as I like my clarinet, I think I want to do saxophone a lot more.
Alto is almost where everybody starts, right?
I think when you're younger in band, you start on just because it's smaller and it makes more sense, as opposed to giving a 10-year-old a tenor or a bari.
Yeah, it's interesting to me, the world of transposing instruments. And transposing is an advanced musical concept, but kids are handed transposing instruments at an early age. Are they taught that they are transposing instruments? And is that a thing when you're small and you pick up an alto saxophone? Is that something that's addressed?
I don't think so. Or it depends on the teachers and the schools. I think most of the time we're just trying to get them to sit still and get the basics of an embouchure and a sound without sounding like birds flying into a bug zapper.
And all the dogs are going in circles.
Yeah. So that's something I speak with students at a certain point, but you just got to pick and see where the student is.
Sure. Okay. All right. So getting into alto, and at what age did you sort of realize? Yeah, I'm going to go full bore into this.
Unfortunately, it wasn't until the end of college. I had a lot of fun in college. I will say that. I had a lot of fun, and maybe a little too much fun. But, I was continuing to grow and learning more about saxophone. I also started flute my last year in college, and which I would consider clarinet, sax, and flute my three main instruments now. But it wasn't really until right when I got out of college and I kind of moved back home and moved in with my parents at the age of 22 and kind of looked around and kind of went, oh yeah, no one's kind of calling me for gigs. I kind of assumed that I was going to graduate with a degree and then I just moved back to the Chicagoland area and everyone would be like, oh yeah, he's out now, call him for gigs.
Got it.
And it was just that realization and just kind of seeing more of the real world that I was more on the right path, and I knew in my head, okay, yeah, this is what I want to do. I just need to get my butt in gear, and I need to work a lot harder.
Did you look back on anything any teachers had taught you to come to that realization, or were you have you always been a self-starter in that way, like, this is what I have to do?
Yes and no.
Okay.
I'm sure it was, but at the same time, it was one of those things where I just, some people call it a moment of clarity. It was just kind of like it snapped and it was like, oh, yeah, I've got a long ways to go, and this is the real world. That perhaps I had teachers telling me about that, but I just had my head so far up my own butt when I was in college that you couldn't tell me anything.
Really?
Unfortunately.
No, I definitely went through a period I think a lot of musicians can resonate with that. Some probably haven't gotten out of that phase of life.
Some are our age and still in that.
It's amazing. So you have what I would call an extensive discography. I think a lot of your world, you've done a lot of recording. Obviously, one of the biggest aspects of your life is that you write a lot of material and you play your original material. Was there a point when you thought, I'm not going to just get myself into the club scene playing standards, I'm going to... Have you always had a compositional element to your world?
For a long time. It kicked in a handful of years after I graduated. You know, I was doing the jobbing scene, playing weddings, and being really busy with that, and just other stuff. It's one of those things that I was doing a lot of that, and then when I started dating my wife, I was always tell her, because she's a band director and I was teaching at her school, I would always say, well, I'm a jazz musician. And then when we started dating, she's like, so when are you playing a jazz gig?
Yeah.
And then I was kind of like, oh, crap. Yeah. I just play weddings and corporate nonsense.
Right.
You know? So that's when I was kind of like, okay, I want to be in this world, and I've been talking about doing an album forever, and that's when I started really getting serious about writing.
Did you have a quartet at the time that you were?
I did not, and I put something together. This back 2005, so a while ago, and it would eventually that year release my first album of all originals.
Is that Maxwell's House?
That's actually called Originals.
Very good. How long did it take you to come up with that name?
Longer than writing the first two. No.
Did you? What did you learn? What did you learn from that first recording project that has stuck with you? What are some of the things that you learned from that?
It's hard to pinpoint something because I learned something from every album,
sure.
And I'm about to have my 9th come out in February. So it's every time I put out an album, I fix these mistakes or oversights, and I get those, and then I find all new oversights and mistakes that I make. But I think the biggest thing for me was just to, I say it all the time, and it sounds kind of cheesy, is to be myself. Yeah. And that's, as I've gone with more albums and just years of living and being a human being and musician, I'm figuring out that I need to succeed or fail as Shawn Maxwell. Yeah. I as much as I love other people's playing and, I might want to steal some stuff or get some inspiration for it, I kind of, around then, I started getting out of my thing of trying to be a clone of somebody and just kind of, I've always wanted, and I think I'm getting close to, when you hear my sound within a couple notes, that's Shawn Maxwell. Or you hear a tune, that's Shawn Maxwell.
That's a question I'd like to ask. If when people, let's focus on when they simply hear you, and we'll get to when they see you next, but when they hear you, what do you want them to really hear?
I want them to hear me.
Yeah.
I want to hear me.
And how do you convey that? How do you paint that picture of this is me when you're
playing? It's and I'm not comparing myself to Cannonball by any means.
That's okay.
But I hear Cannonball Adderley one note. It's him.
Yeah.
And he's got a style, and he's got his own language. He's got his own voice, his own sound, and it's just his voice and his improvisation. Charlie Parker the same way. John Coltrane, even Miles Davis, Dizzy. Yeah. All those guys, you can hear a note or two, and you know who it is automatically. I'm not putting myself in that.
I understand. Yeah.
But I want that to be me. So I think of tone-wise, I'm trying to sound different. Yeah. I'm purposely sounding different. Articulation-wise, I'm trying to articulate differently than a lot of other guys.
Is that equipment related as well as embouchure and stuff like that? I mean, what goes into like if you were to take, case in point, I saw Itzhak Perlman once play a recital on a student's instrument, and it was still one of the most beautiful things I'd ever heard. How would someone use your exact setup on an alto and not sound like you? What goes into making you sound?
Well, the equipment is important, and I love my equipment, all that stuff. But in the end, once you get to a certain point, you're going to sound like you, whether I'm on a Mark VI Alto and Van Doren mouthpiece, which I love, or if I'm on
an Amazon Prime, an Amazon Prime.
Well, I don't know if we want to go that far,
okay. All right.
but no, it's. I think once you get that inner you, that voice is going to come through, and depending on the equipment, it might not come through as easily or as clearly. But the equipment is important. But again, once you internalize it, I feel I would sound like me, regardless of whatever setup I had.
Let's go to being live. When you play before a group of people, what are you wanting them to experience in terms of, like, why are you playing your music for them? What is your hope at the end of a gig? Either, aside from them to pay attention, but when you, like, what do you want to speak through your own music? And obviously you're writing your original music, so you have a leg up, but what do you want to convey? What do you want them to see and hear?
Well, that's not a light question at all, is it?
I
know. It's hard to say and hard to put into words because it changes every gig and every circumstance. And to me, I don't ever try to go in with I mean, obviously you want it to go well. Sure. You want to improvise and tell a story, kind of go with it. But I'm not sitting here and thinking like, well, in the second tune, I'm going to play a lot of fast notes. And the third tune, I'm going to play slow, long notes. And I'm just kind of feeling out how that last tune went and how does it connect to the next one and how can it be different? Yeah. And try to have, without sounding cheesy, a smooth emotional experience through it.
No, it's very.
I feel like a dork saying that.
You shouldn't. No. That brings up an interesting point, and I was talking about this on a previous interview as well. Let's say you're playing, and we all know that feeling when you begin to lose the room. You know, when you kind of can sense that there's now a disconnect between you and the audience. When you sense that, do you adjust what you're doing to try and reel them back in, get them back? Let's say you're playing a solo and you just kind of feel like, wow, they're now just zoned and the band is up here and I'm up here playing and I'm talking, but no one seems to be listening. Do you ever adjust something musically or stylistically to try and get them back? Or do you maintain, well, this is my idea, my concept, no matter what's happening, I'm going to stay with this? Does that make sense?
It does. I'm trying to think. I don't want to say that I've never lost an audience, but, you know, usually when you're playing sit-down listening rooms and we're doing our thing, I just don't think that really happens much. I think if you have a purpose, my thing is I don't want to just go up there and play tunes. Yeah. You know, I mean, we can go up there and we can play a 35-minute long tune and blow on it. I want it to mean something, go somewhere, whether it's my solo or someone else in the band. I want us to grow and release and just make it make sense. And if it is going to be a 30-minute tune, why is it a 30-minute tune? Right. You know, is it just because we can all play 4,000 choruses? That doesn't mean anything. So I try not to even get to that point. I just want everything to make sense, if that makes sense. Yeah. So I think it sounds like you're sort of thinking about it preemptively, you know, and you're approaching gigs with a sort of a preemptive strike of playing my original music, and we're just going to have you the whole time, you know? Yeah, and I mean, the beautiful thing about jazz and improvisation, it's like I'm not in control of everything. Right. And every day, you know, we played 4 nights in a row, which we have, and the same set list that can, you know, that can sound different and go in a different way just because we're in a slightly different mood or someone else was a little upset or happy or whatever. So I try not to get in the way of that, but I think if we're smart and the band is all listening to each other, we can get through that and just like trying to put it into words without sounding ridiculous. I think if you do that, you will keep an audience that is interested in listening. I think you'll keep them and you won't lose them because they'll be along for that journey. Sure. Man, that sounds cheesy. No, it doesn't. I mean, I think one of the things I'm coming to realize is some of the things that we avoid saying because they might sound cheesy are actual real things that should be addressed. So I think less. You just have to be careful how we say it because the jazz police will come and get us. It's very real. There are jazz police. So this sort of leads into, and being a composer, I think this is a good question for you. When you're writing, and you're choosing a set list, Are you writing music to satisfy you? Are you writing music that you're hoping the musically inclined will really appreciate and dig? Or are you writing music that the non-educated, musically educated will latch onto? Yes.
Got it. Next question, please.
No, I've done all of those.
Okay.
I've written in the past of thinking like, well, this will check this box, or this is what I need to have on this, and this, so yes, I've done all those things. The truth is now I just write, and I've uncluttered my head, and I write a tune. I see what it is, and sometimes a tune can be written and it's done, and it is what it is in an hour. There's other tunes that I've had that have gone through a process over like 12 years of becoming what it is, and then it's there. And I still have some that are in that 12th year that still need some fine-tuning to find its spot. I'm not trying to check any box on trying to appease fans or the musicians, and I have done that in the past. Sure. I think when you just write a good tune, you write a good tune, and if it works, it works. And I had to say, over the last handful of years, I've thought less about those other, requirements of writing for this or that or that. So I guess long answer. I am writing for me, but I'm my harshest critic, and in my head, he's like, okay, this is an acceptable tune. This is cool, and this is what I'm feeling. And if I don't feel that, then it's not good. I'm not using it.
Got it. How many tunes would you say you have that haven't really seen the light of day, or you've put once in front of the group to read down? You're like, pass it in.
Oh, hundreds.
Really?
Hundreds. Yeah. I mean, and there's a lot of those that then kind of go on the garbage pile, and some get resurrected and then like changed, or it's amazing how something I wrote in 2008 just wasn't happening, and then I pull it up in 2018 and I'm like, if I just change this and that, cool. Do
you ever collaborate with someone on tunes, or do you typically fly solo on the writing?
As of now, I've flown solo. I've flown solo, and I mean, even in the tunes, there's a lot of times where I will scrap the entire tune, but you know what? Those 4 measures are great, and I'm not opposed to collaborating. Sure. It's just kind of my composing goes like hit or miss. There'll be a month or two where I don't write a single note, and then there'll be a week where I compose like crazy. It's just kind of up and down, and that's one of the other things I like about my style is I don't feel like I have to write. I don't have to. You know what I mean? I've put out, over albums, a lot of original tunes, and I have a lot more in the can. I don't feel like I need to have anything, and therefore taking that pressure off, I feel like that when I do sit down and do it, it comes a lot easier.
As a band leader and a composer, you put your chart in front of the group. Do you feel a comfort level to say to your bass player, hey, this is the line I'm thinking? Piano player, this is the comping thing I'm thinking. It's very specifically, or do you put the chart in front of them and let them speak for themselves before you...
Now I feel that comfort, and the way I see it, because again, the musicians that I work with, I want their input, right. Because I'm not a bassist, I'm not a pianist, I'm a musician and I'm a music fan, so I hear something in my head, and I will tell people, like, we were rehearsing and just recorded a new album not too long ago. When we put the charts in front of them, I said, guys, this is the style I'm feeling, this is the groove. This is the line I wrote for you. This is what I'm thinking of here and there. Let's play it through once or twice like that. Get a feel for it. And then if you want to change some stuff, let's talk. Let's do it.
There are definitely tunes in my world that I put in front of one group and I thought, this is not going to work. They weren't bad players, but I just thought, that didn't go well at all. A couple years later, I take it
because of lack of direction, or
maybe so. I think that's what I'm realizing, and then I'll take the same tune a couple years later. I'll put it in front of a different group. I'm like, why is this working now? And I think it's because I felt the comfort level of getting specific, and I think you have to. And I think we choose to work with musicians that are willing to hear that, because I've definitely encountered people who are like, just let me do this, just let me play this the way I'm hearing this, and I think that can be tough if you've sat and you've composed this and people aren't following that.
Yeah, if you have a vision in your head, if you have that sound, and it's not sounding like you want. I mean, again, it's a couple ways you could go with it. It might be good. It might be better than what was in your head. And I've had that before.
Do you write at the piano? Or are you sitting at the piano?
Sometimes. Sometimes I write at piano. Sometimes I'm writing off a flute. Sometimes I'm writing
you
off
write
a sax.
you write. I've been I've been in a couple of groups with you, and there's some challenging things, and it's. I've always actually wondered, where are you writing this? Are you writing this at a piano? But it sounds like you're not always writing at a piano.
No, sometimes piano. Sometimes I have a saxophone. Sometimes I have a flute. Sometimes I don't have anything. Sometimes I'm just jotting on a piece of staff paper, or even I have my laptop and I start clicking in finale and just kind of.
And are you hearing some of these complicated chord changes and these
Yes.
voicings in your head? Wow.
Yes, I hear a lot of weird crap in my head.
I bet you do. Yeah.
I might have to have that checked out. But
Yeah.
No, I mean, it's kind of going with what we said just a minute ago. I have the audio and the vision and everything in my head. It's conveying it sometimes is easy and sometimes hard. And sometimes what I'm hearing is just slightly different from what it ends up being. But
Yeah.
I've got that. And I know what you're talking about is sometimes as a band leader, you want to trust the musicians and let them bring their thing to it. But if you're hearing a line or whatever like that, it's your tune.
Absolutely.
You gotta put it in there.
I think it's important to have musicians that are willing to hear that. I mean, that goes into the whole camaraderie thing of an ensemble and our version of chamber music, and I think that's important.
Yeah. And if someone really doesn't want to do it, well, there's a lot of cats to call.
There are a lot of cats to call. So when I get in the car to go on a long drive, or I got 30, 40 minutes ahead of me, and you and I both live far away from pretty much everything, so we have that...
Forest Moon of Endor, I call
it.
Right.
Do you have a go-to search? Do you have something that you do with great regularity, and you might even listen to on repeat, because you have no one to answer to, and it's you in the car going somewhere? Do you have a search either on YouTube or Spotify that... I'm just going to listen to this because I like to listen to this. Whether it's jazz or not, do you have something that you go to with great regularity?
Well, not along those lines. I have my iPhone, the iTunes. I've got a billion albums on there. Yeah. I kind of go like on a streak of like a couple weeks.
Yep.
Like right now, it's an old David Binney album. I think it's Cities and Desires or Cities. Okay. Sorry, David. The album is amazing, and I hadn't heard it in a while. And for some reason, it came up on shuffle when I was running like a week or so ago.
You are a big runner.
I'm trying. But and then it just made me remember, oh man, how much I love this album and everything about it. So like the last week and a half, as I've been driving, it's plugging that in and listening to that all the way through. But I kind of jump around like with albums and artists. Yeah. Like about a week or so, I kind of get heavy on one. I try to rotate it a little bit.
Does that affect your writing?
Yes and no. I will realize that when I'm listening to a David Binney or something like that, then I start writing something trying to be in that, and I have to stop myself and go like, "You're not him. Don't do that. Don't do that." I try to be more influenced by like not trying to copy that, but kind of being pushed to do something along the lines of that. If that makes sense. Yeah. Like, Kenny Garrett Happy People album. Yep. I wore that thing out, and I love that Happy People tune,
Yeah.
And I, was like, I want to do something like that. And then I did 3 or 4 copies of that tune that just sucked. Well, because it wasn't original, it wasn't cool, and I was just copying. And then it's like, well, I need to just take the vibe of that and do something. Yeah. And then I started actually getting somewhere with it.
Interesting.
So yeah, it does influence me, but I'm trying to get it to influence me in a different way as opposed to just copying, just to kind of the again, in the dorky jazz musician thing, we shouldn't say the spirit of it, the energy. That's where I'm trying to get the what is the word? My brain just went blank. The vibe.
The vibe. Got it.
But not vibing.
Not vibing. That's an important distinction. To date, thinking about your entire discography, It's sort of a desert island question. If you were only able to have recorded one album of everything you've got going on, what's the one you would take with you?
Of all the albums I have recorded?
Yep. If your hearse could pull a U-Haul and you could only put one album in there, what album would that be?
Well, it would be my newest one, which not out yet.
Okay.
And I know that's probably, again, easy to say. My latest one is the greatest.
A previous guest gave the same answer.
Yeah. It's our newest album's going to be out in February of 2020.
Okay.
So, and that one definitely, and I would just say, I probably say it every album. It's every time I record now, I feel more free, more me, and just more advanced, and just it's the one thing. We all listen to our old albums, and some of them we kind of go.
It's hard to listen to a lot of my stuff.
Why am I doing that, dude? Why are you playing that lick again?
Yeah.
Oh, dude, you really like that lick?
It's a good lick.
Oh, that's cool.
It's a good lick.
I liked it better in the third and fourth chorus, but the seventh is cool too. And you know, again, no one's a harsher critic of themselves as I am of myself. You know, but this last album, I mean, I'm proud of a lot of my albums, most of them. But this last one, I would say, is definitely the most me I've been.
Let's drill down a little further. If you're only allowed to have recorded one tune in your entire life, what tune would it be?
Of my originals, huh?
Of your original music. Or not. There's one tune you would have been allowed to record.
Well, I think if I pick a standard, the Jazz Police will have me in for questioning for sure. You know what? Can I break the rules and narrow it to two? I'd say it'd either be my original Ava or Monster Shoes.
Two of my favorite tunes of yours.
Oh, well, thanks.
I've done both of them in my own group on various days to great success.
Cool. I hope you reported that to BMI.
I did, very much so. Your check should have been...
no, they sent me like an envelope of pennies.
Good. Excellent.
But, those are two... I mean, I'm proud of a lot of my tunes, but those are two that I feel just compositionally wise, I think they stand on their own. Melody wise, I think it's two that, like, when you walk away, people are humming them, which I've even heard. I call them normies, the guys who aren't really jazz musicians and dorks like us. They go like, I never really hummed jazz tunes, but I had that one stuck in my head for a week, and I was like, okay.
How long did it take you to write those tunes?
Monster Shoes was actually an attempt at. This is when I was saying I was trying to copy Happy People. Okay. So there were several failed attempts before I was just like, ugh, and I just wrote it, and then it was a matter of minutes. Ava was another one. Actually, didn't take that long at all. It just kind of came out once I had the basics of it. It just kind of flowed out.
Interesting. I like that. I like that.
They're not all that easy.
No, they aren't. No, for sure. For sure, they're not. Let's think about, so you primarily do your own thing. You also get called for freelance work. Do you gravitate towards freelance work that not supports, but that sort of gets in gear with your main thing of your original music and that kind of thing? Or do you gravitate towards freelance work that's just a departure? That's sort of, okay, I'm going to just do this, it's different? Or do you like to take things that maybe other people's original music or things like that? Do you process this when you field phone calls?
I'm just down to create. Yeah. And I want to have fun playing. Knock on wood, I'm at the point in my life where I can say no to things. And it wasn't always like that when I get called. And I think like a lot of us, I've done... thousands of gigs that I really didn't like, and I was just the whole time from the first note to the last, I was just like, "Oh, get me out of here!" I don't feel like that happens really very much at all anymore. And I'm not necessarily. I love original stuff. I love stuff where I can kind of go in and put my voice into someone else's original project, or again, being me, kind of going what we're talking about, but following directions when I need to. But that's what I want to do. I want to play music. And whether it's original stuff or standards or, a tribute to whoever, whatever, I'm down for all of it as long as we're actually making music and it's fun, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. So you're a Van Doren artist?
Van Doren artist and a Consumer artist.
Very good. How long have you been with those two companies?
Consumer, I've been with them for about 14 years. Okay. It's been a while. And then Van Doren, not quite as long, but I'd say it's been 5 or 6 years now.
Okay.
And they're both great. I like the products of both, and especially Van Doren has been great with sending me to schools for clinics and all kinds of great stuff. They're just fantastic.
Let's say, so you have your setup for. I'm just sort of nerding out on gear for a minute.
I don't plug into anything, though.
For those who are still watching. You have your setup for your original stuff that probably is pretty consistent from gig to gig. Let's say you get called for a big band gig. Do you change equipment? Let's say you're going to be playing second alto in a big band. Does equipment change, or do you adjust embouchure and breath control? I
keep the same gear on all my instruments because, again, my thing is, if you are hiring me, you wanted me, and I think I'm pretty consistent on how I sound. A big band gig, I might, depending if I'm playing lead alto or whatever, I might just have to put a little more air behind it. But no, I'm pretty consistent, and even like. If I'm going to play a more classical thing or a jazz thing, I'm playing on the same setup, which I know is a big faux pas, a no-no. But again, I've gotten to the point I can control that stuff. I can change it, and even then, I don't want to lose my sound. I want it to be me.
Yeah.
No, I don't change gear. I'm going for the Shawn Maxwell sound, and it's the Van Doren mouthpiece and reed and ligature and my Mark VI Alto, and
I know that
don't want to change it.
Trumpet players will swap out mouthpieces for a lead player might have a different mouthpiece than a soloist. Does the saxophone world have that?
I think it does for some people, and there are certain mouthpieces that'll let you project more. I'm just not of that mindset anymore, and I think of the trumpet players with mouthpieces and stuff.
It's an endless pursuit.
Well, I've gone through it as well. There's an old box at my house full of mouthpieces that one week were the mouthpiece.
Sure.
And ligatures and reeds, and I feel like liberated and freed from that. The Van Doren product I love, and I've tried everything else, and if other people have luck with it, good for them.
Yeah.
For me, this works, and this feels the most comfortable, and I've got my setup. I know it works.
And you got a free windbreaker out of it.
Yeah. Well, that too.
Well,
that's where it is right there.
It's really why I'm with the company.
Yeah.
Rico, there was no free windbreaker.
Yeah. No, they had a Ferrari, but I like the windbreaker.
The windbreaker is the key thing. So let's talk about what you've got going on now. You are a real serious teacher. You do a lot of teaching. How many?
I have a private lesson studio. I'm sorry, out in the Western Burbs. I'd say right now I've got about 40 students that see me weekly. Clarinet, saxophone, and flutes.
All coming to the house, or are you also doing some travel?
Right now I'm just teaching out of my home studio, which is pretty nice.
Yeah.
Make them come to me.
Yeah.
I stay there.
Yeah.
I have all kinds of levels. I have junior high, high school, and a handful of college and upper level students.
Are they working through things like doubling and stuff like that, or are you primarily focusing on single horn?
It depends on where the students are. I've learned that, of the 40 right now, and probably in the next few weeks, I might go up to about 50. Okay. Every student is different. And I have some junior high students where we're just working basics, and they need to focus on that instrument. I have some that are the same age who are flying and doing great and looking at doubling. I address each student individually head on, and I found if I have I have an overall syllabus of per instrument where I want to start and kind of go. But I've also learned that with this kid, we're going to go that way, and this kid that way, and this kid that way, and so it's hard to say like a doubling for everybody. No.
It's not something you push.
No, not at all.
Yeah,
I see where students are and where students' interests are too. I have some students that eat, breathe, and sleep music, and I have others who just kind of like, oh, I'm here today.
Yeah. How do you keep track of 40 plus students? How do you? What's your system of organization for keeping track of all those students?
Microsoft Excel.
So you're an Excel guy.
I made my own little forms, and I track, when they pay me how much, and I have that all down.
And what you're doing in each lesson.
And I track what we do in each lesson, and I keep notes.
So after each lesson, are you going through and?
Yeah, I don't write a book, but I'll just write a general kind of thing, and I give them a grade, A, B, C, D, or F. And, it's like some students, and it's not even being mean, but I'll even pull up, like, Mom and Dad, come here. These last 4 lessons have been Ds.
Okay.
I don't know if it's really worth your money here. Or just, hey, you're doing great, man. I've been seeing it. Just kind of, I don't have the greatest memory to begin with on that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But especially with 40 some or more lessons, I need that second of pulling up my laptop and going, oh, okay, what's going on, man? Oh, cool. We did this last week. I remember it was good now. Let's do that.
Excel scares the daylights out of me.
Why is that?
It's just a sea of boxes. It just looks like a brick wall because of all the.
Oh,
yeah.
I've kind of formatted it to fit my own thing, you know. And I know there are all the kinds of different computer programs you do, and a lot of very successful friends of mine who are teaching 90 to 100 students a week have shown me those, and I was like, no, I like my Microsoft.
You got your system.
I got my thing.
Let's talk about the new record. Who's on it?
Myself playing alto and soprano saxophone.
Just alto and soprano.
Yep. No clarinet flute in this one. It just didn't fit. It was not on the right tunes for it. Jeremiah Hunt on bass.
Okay.
Colin Clausen is playing Rhodes.
Okay.
And then Phil Beal on drums. So back to a quartet.
Good band.
Then Chad McCullough actually is a guest on one of the tracks.
He begs everybody to be on everyone's.
Well, you got to take.
It's a charity offer. It's a charity. Yeah.
It's Chad.
It's Chad.
We're gonna edit that out, right?
He's not even watching. Where was it recorded?
Shirk Studios. We've done the last couple albums.
Yeah. That's a beautiful room.
It's great. And I Stephen Shirk, the owner, is great, and just it was one of those things that we had it. Well, I don't want to say we had to get an album done, but it was an opportunity for a label came up, and we wanted to move quick, and we wanted to be somewhere where we were familiar and comfortable.
How long did it take?
We were in studio for 2 days. Okay. So it took about a day and a half.
Did you block 2 days, or did you block more time? And then
no, we blocked 2 days, and I'd say, we went back the second day and did a couple other tunes, and we had it. So it was a fairly fast session.
Some people find that they create a lot in the studio, and they use the studio time. Obviously, it's brutally expensive to do that, but you are obviously well rehearsed before you go into the studio. Is that your approach to be, this is what we're doing?
It's been all kinds of different ways, and we've done that creating the studio too. And sometimes it works. On this particular one, we rehearsed, and we actually had a half a week tour leading up to that thing. So we were on the road playing this stuff and just kind of workshopping it and changing and like, hey, I like what we did on Saturday.
Right.
Let's do that. And then even then it became something else in the studio. So, I mean, it was rehearsed and it was ready to go, but is it ever really ready to go?
But there's nothing like being on the road, playing these tunes night after night, and then going into the studio. It's a very cool process because you feel in a real-world situation, you see an audience responding and you see what they're not responding to, and that can also help guide, not all the time, but I think that can help guide the thought process and what your approach will be in the studio. It gives you that real world thing. So the mediums, what mediums will this be available on?
We'll be out on compact disc, streaming, downloads,
in all of your favorite places,
and vinyl will be everything.
Is this the first album on vinyl?
No, we have one on vinyl. Our last one on the Origin label, Music in My Mind.
Yep.
That's available on vinyl.
It's a great record.
Oh, thank you. If you go to ShawnMaxwell.com, you can get the vinyl right there.
It's on the screen right now. Very cool. Great record. Why did you... Is it just new tunes in your head that you want to record, or did you want to depart specifically from certain things from the previous? Is every album a departure from the previous, or is it a volume of tunes kind of a thing that we need to unleash on the world?
Both. I mean, we had new tunes, and there's a few old tunes. I tried on every album. I try to revisit an older tune. And I actually started, I'm almost done with it. My first album was recorded in 2005, and I wasn't me. It was some other dude that looked like me and kind of sounded like me, because he didn't. But they were great tunes, and I never felt like I played all of them like how I wanted to, style-wise and playing-wise. So starting on my third album, I would have one or two tunes from that first album where I redo.
Yeah.
So this one's got, I think after this next album, I think there's only one tune on my original album that we haven't done. But we've got a tune from the first album just redone, and then we have newer tunes. And it's just... I've been playing with larger groups. You were in my 10-piece group, and the last couple albums have been quintets. I just wanted to return back to, no offense to my trumpets. I wanted to be just the only horn, and I wanted to open that up a little bit more. And I also have been playing a lot more soprano.
Have you?
So it's just kind of... there's so many different things that I just wanted to try it this way on this album and have a completely departure. Now, does it still sound like me? I'm hoping so. I believe so. But I think it's just a lot of things are turned up and changed a little different. So it is much different from the last few albums.
When you're choosing this music for the album, it's all your original music and you're rehearsing it. What's the rehearsal technique? We sort of touched on this earlier in the interview, but... You show up with these tunes. Would you say you run a fairly efficient rehearsal, or are you letting the guys do some exploring and reeling in, exploring, reeling in? What's your rehearsal? What's your rehearsal process and technique with when you have these are the guys on the record? This is what we're going to do. What's the process?
Usually, it's hopefully to be very organized and stuff, but sometimes it just kind of gets away from you.
Yeah.
On this last album, I think all the guys were able to explore and give input, and that's what I want. And there were some times where we're like, you know what? No, I want to keep it this way, or I want to do this, and, respectfully. And I think they're all like, okay, all right, But this last one especially was pretty organized, but and again, I would say this is my vision. Let's try it this way, and then they would give input, and there was a lot of input and things that they did. I'm like, you know what? I love that. Let's do that, but. Yeah, it was kind of... I don't think it should be just one thing. Yeah. I mean, especially in the kind of music that we're doing, if there isn't some kind of... how he keeps saying, I want to sound like me. Well, I want my drummer to sound like him, and I want the bass player. And
That's why you hired them.
Yes, exactly. And if I'm stifling that, then I might as well just get Band in the Box to kind of do it. And
Why Rhodes, the whole album?
Because I've recorded a ton of albums with piano.
Got it.
And
so
I wanted something different.
Sonic departure.
Yeah, sonic departure. And he's doing a lot of, for lack of a better word, effects and different stuff on it. So I know when people hear that, they think, like we're doing Miles.
Your music lends itself to thoughtful effects, though, I think.
Oh, okay. Well, thanks.
I do. I mean, when we were in the Alliance, I mean, you had guitar, and you asked Mish to play through some effects, and I think the angular nature of your music lends itself to effects, because why not? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Why not?
If it actually adds something. Effects just to have effects.
Right, for the sake of it.
And then I feel like with the Alliance and even with this new album, it adds a lot, I think.
Early Gary Burton stuff, I mean, he was playing through pedals and there was distortion on the vibraphone, and it's really a unique sound.
And that's his voice. You hear that, voice. I know who that is.
Yeah. Last question. Let's say you could go back 15, 20 years to the Shawn Maxwell that it's kind of realizing, you know what, this is what I'm maybe longer than that, but this is what I want to be doing. What is some advice and encouragement? Let's say you had yourself as a student, so to speak, and he said, Mr. Maxwell, this is what I want to do for a living. Knowing what you know now, the problems you've had to solve, the life experiences you've been through, what are a couple of things, doesn't have to be one thing, but what are a couple of things that you would say, this is my thought.
I mean, one is get going, man. Get off your rear end.
Yeah.
And that took me a long time. And I still feel, I feel accomplished and I feel, fluent on my instruments and everything. But I also still feel that I'm behind where I should be. For me, I think there was, again, I told you I enjoyed college and I enjoyed the alcoholic beverage or 2 or 6.
Or 6, yeah.
And after college, I got my butt kind of in gear, and I could have done more when I was younger. So that's the main thing. I encourage everyone. When I talk to, I go to colleges and speak to classes, I tell them, whether they're freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, your career does not start when you graduate. It starts right now.
Right now.
And start learning more. Start getting out there, seeing real music. And that's another thing. I talk to big game, and I listen to a bunch of CDs and stuff like that. But I wasn't really going to live clubs and stuff like that too, and kind of seeing the real world. Because I think you would maybe agree. Nothing against the academic side, but that doesn't line up really with the real world.
You can't read it all in a book.
No. And there's just certain things that you have to... I was telling even a great player if he sticks with it, it's going to be fantastic. It's like, you know Stella, but you don't really know Stella. You got to get out and play it and be in the real world. So my main thing would be get moving. Quit saying you're going to do something. Do it. Make something happen and get out in the real world. Yeah. And that's my big thing. And, that was my downfall for many, many years. And I feel like wherever I am is in a good spot, I could be even further along if I kind of would have taken that advice. And I won't name names, but there's a lot of guys we know that should be farther, could be farther, could be killing it, but they're not pushing themselves to get out there and make something happen.
Yeah.
Because no one's coming to give you anything, right?
No.
They don't come to give me anything.
Yeah.
No one has offered me albums, but when I make them and do it, I make stuff happen from it.
I think what you said about going out and listening and being a part of the scene, that is critical. I think especially if you want someone to hire you, or if you want to get into a club or a place, facial recognition is huge. And there are a lot of people who can hustle and make calls and send emails, but if you're not, and this is something that I struggle with.
Well, it's hard to do.
Well, and sometimes I blame it on living, in the middle of absolute nowhere. But sometimes it's just me not getting myself in gear and getting out there. But it's so important to be seen, not just to be seen, but so that people know that you value their efforts.
Yeah, and I think as we get older, it gets tougher because you have family and you live out in the burbs. I live out in the burbs. And then also, sometimes I have to think, is it... I don't want to say is it worth it.
I understand
but is it worth going, into the city and hanging? And it'll be fun, it'll be great. Or would it be better for me to stay home and work for an hour and a half on my laptop and finalize this tour? And that's a tricky thing. But, if I go back to when I was single and didn't have any gigs, I didn't have any money either, but I would figure that out. That's when I wish I would have been out more and networking and just hearing.
Yeah. Well, it's been a pleasure to hear your thought process, to hear some things that I didn't know, and to learn about, give people an insight into the deep mind of Shawn Maxwell. So
that's the new album name.
It's the deep mind of Shawn. Anyway, thank you so much for being a part of this,
man.
And
appreciate it.
We'll play some music together.
Cool.